What opinion of yours did a complete 180? Fountain pens are for pretentious jerkwads who want to show off. Turns out, it was just that one pretentious jerkwad with a fountain pen that drove me nuts in high school, and fountain pens themselves are actually really fun, and the online community is one of the nicest I've met. I love these pens. As a lefty, I will never know the majesty of using a fountain pen. My concept of weakness. I used to think that crying was weak, being the first to apologize was weak, that you were strong to hold a grudge, that letting go of anger and forgiving people was weak, that hitting people where it hurts the most is the most satisfying feeling in the world. I was brought up in a really toxic family. I have recently realized how much of a jerk I was. I'm so proud of you for growing and learning. Keep it up, AMD, break the cycle. I was hardcore into new age beliefs and alternative medicine for most of my life. I even started a naturopathy degree. I don't even know what happened, but over the course of a year I realized, oh, so this is all BS. Some plants work very well as medicine and some are even mainstream as a result, but taking garlic for appendicitis or Turkish rhubarb root for cancer, forget it. Why don't people use the search bar on AskReddit to see if a question has already been answered? Realize that it's fresh answers most of the time. Also realize that Reddit search is complete crap. If you want to find something on Reddit, Google it. I used to hate bell peppers. Now I try to incorporate them into every meal, and my husband attempts to prevent me from so doing. This is my favorite response. A lot of the things in this thread really confused me and this was nice and light. Euthanasia. I was very against it. I used to say that you never know, there's always a chance, no matter how tiny it is, that they would find something at the 11th hour to save someone. I remember saying, imagine you kill someone because they suffer too much, and there's no hope, and 2 weeks later, they find the cure for that. How would you feel? Then I got older, and grandparents and their friends got older too, and I saw what suffering truly means. And now I don't consider that a very unlikely hypothetical chance that a cure might be found is worth it. Vaccines aren't good. To be fair, my dad shoved that crap and a bunch of other crap down my throat my entire adolescence. I used to hate King of the Hill. It would come on at the tail end of my DVR'd Simpsons, or even worse, instead of. When I was younger, the drawings and animations put me off, and I only ever really saw the opening theme before turning it off in disgust. I love King of the Hill more than The Simpsons now. I found that my fondness for King of the Hill grew as I got older and slowly morphed into Hank Hill. Wanting kids as soon as possible. With 6 years old I became uncle for the first time. Both my sisters are 18+ years older than me, and I babysit a lot between my 4 nieces. I even became a kindergarten teacher, but now I work in a different field and see how crappy my teenage nieces are to my sisters, and I'm just like, I'll wait a bit longer. They are teenagers. They will be like that no matter how old you are. My opinion on mental illness and antidepressants and everything related. I always thought pure discipline and cultivating strength of mind was the way, along with a healthy lifestyle, exercising, etc. Then I met my girlfriend and realized for the most part, that's all bulls. How she's struggled for years with this and how it cripples your will, hope and motivation to do anything. I also didn't understand clinical depression as a whole before her. I've grown to be never-endingly supportive of her, as incredibly difficult it is to do it. She's worth it, and every bit. It's really tough to be the rock in the relationship at all times, but I'm getting better and better at it. Since then my opinion has evolved further in that none of it is so black and white. The mind as a whole is a very chaotic and somewhat abstract thing, as is the meds that affects it. It's just one chaotic intermingling mass of facets that all interact and impact the other. All that matters is that you have support, whatever that means to you. If anyone has a partner that is suffering from depression, and they struggle in any capacity, you're most welcome to send me a PM for advice, if it helps at all. I used to be pro-death penalty when I was younger. I thought anyone who murdered another human being in cold blood didn't deserve the life that they took away from someone else. Now I'm against the death penalty, mostly due to practical reasons. There are way too many inmates who have been exonerated by DNA evidence, some after they were executed, and I don't feel comfortable with an imperfect justice system handing out permanent sentences. Gandalf instantly changed my mind on this topic. Children should be with their mothers when parents divorce. After my parents divorced, my mom got custody of us and she changed. She'd disappear for days, not leave food or money for food. I was beaten more than I could count and she threatened suicide when we talked about going to live with our dad. We were paychecks to her. Now, I believe that lots of times the father is the better parent but doesn't get the opportunity to show it. I think gender shouldn't matter and custody should be decided by how fit they are to parent. I've met crappy dads. I've met crappy moms. Sometimes they're both good or both bad. I wish we could see more shared custody and less parents deprived of seeing their children. I was raised primarily in the southern US and taught, in school and by family, that the Civil War was mainly about states' rights and that slavery was just one of the many talking points brought up during succession. Turns out just about every state declared in writing they were leaving because they wanted to keep their slaves. Even my parents paid attention to the facts and stopped pushing that narrative. My grandparents are still quietly racist though. I had a really bad upbringing, abuse, neglect, sexual abuse. My father was unable to read or write and was an alcoholic. My mother suffered from serious mental health issues even though we are close. As a result I started to have behavioral issues around 11. I smoked, drank, skipped school and refused to do anything in school. This went on until I was 14/15. I think it just occurred to me that the only way to get out of this mess was my education and become what no one thought I would be. I graduated high school with honors, went to college for biology maintaining a 3.7 GPA. I did research that has been published and won multiple awards. I proved everyone wrong. You broke the cycle. That's seriously amazing. Good for you. Spanking. I used to think it was the way to get your kids in line. Now that I have kids I know it's very much not the best way, at all. A spanking is temporary. The corner, taking away a favorite toy, being forced to apologize, that's the real pain. But seriously, spanking was always on the table for me, whatever it takes to raise good kids. And now that I'm in it, spanking's not even in the tool belt. A quote that changed my mind on it and really resonated with me but I can't remember where I found it. If your child is old enough to understand reason, use reason. If they're not old enough to understand the reason you're hitting them. Back then when Avatar The Last Airbender got aired on TV I didn't wanna watch it because all the other kids at school acted like benders and play fighted. I just thought that it looked stupid and that's why that new show is stupid too. I always skipped the show and even its commercials immediately when I saw them on TV, until one day I didn't zap away, even though it was a random episode and I had no idea what was going on and who the characters were. I got hooked, started to watch it in its entirety and loved it so much. Now that I've rewatched it and recommended it to a friend of mine, who also loves it, I have to say it's the best animated series out there. Can't wait to being able to rewatch it again. You always need a cool down time lol. My little brother watched it when it first aired and I used to tease him relentlessly for it. A few years back my partner talked me into checking it out and it's now one of my most favorite things. Like I'm considering an app or two. Grew up in Bible Belt. Gay marriage is wrong. Went to university. Hung out with LGBT folks. Found out my favorite relative is a lesbian. The frick was I thinking? Astounding how much education can change mind. I was a serious apocalypse Christian as a teenager, all stoked to get raptured so I could look down and watch all you filthy sinners twist and writhe in agony. Eventually I realized it was making me think crazy thoughts. Finally I actually read the Bible for myself. That was the last straw. I'm a kinder, more thoughtful person without religion. So I could look down and watch all you filthy sinners twist and writhe in agony. Heaven is a special place in heck, where you can watch the people you hate get hurt. Andrew Jackson Jihad. Does a 150 count? The first time I learned about abortion was when my mom was very up in arms about the topic. So I got all the horror stories like it was doctors ripping babies apart and pulling them out of the mother. And I was right there with my mom. Totally against it. Then I got older and learned more about it. Was still against it, but it didn't seem like the horrible baby murder thing anymore. Then a friend got an abortion and it all changed. I saw firsthand what went into the decision, what it actually entailed to do it, and how a person is affected afterwards. Became pro-choice immediately. I couldn't do it, personally, but that's part of it, right? I get a choice too. I used to do drugs and party a lot. My husband and I moved up towards my parents and his career took off. I started a business. We had a family. A lot of my friends are still drinking, partying and getting arrested for stupid crap. You become the company you keep. My husband is really good company for me. Raised Christian. Thought homosexuality was wrong. Never questioned that belief. Even after I left religion behind, I never really examined my own views on homosexuality. I didn't know any gay people, and the only homosexuality I saw on TV was portrayed negatively. This was the Reagan years. Then Kids in the Hall came out. Scott Thompson in particular made me do a total 180 of opinion. This guy isn't dangerous. He's friggin' hilarious. And he seems like a decent person. Maybe gays are just like straight people. Except for one detail which is really quite minor in the grand scheme of things. This was pre-Ellen, pre-Queer Eye for the straight guy, pre-everything. It seems like a lifetime ago. I'm still embarrassed I ever held those views. Hey, people make mistakes. You are a success story and I applaud you for having kind opinions in a time period when not many people did. Thank you. I used to be opposed to gay marriage, like 20 years ago. It just seemed wrong that a holy institution like that should be perverted in such a way. Then someone pointed out that marriage is a specific legal contact separate from any sort of religious beliefs or ceremonies. You have weddings between faiths, Muslim weddings, Buddhist, satanic weddings, atheist weddings, etc. No one is saying Jesus needs to sign off on whether or not two people want to be legally bound together. It profoundly changed my outlook on life. My god, the arguments I've had over this explaining to someone that not all marriage is Christian marriage was surprisingly hard. James Randi's $1 million challenge turned me into a skeptic. Before that I believed just about anything, from religious claims to alien abduction stories. It's funny how millions of people claim to have proof that they have special abilities or irrefutable proof of the supernatural, yet not a single one of them can pass this test. This challenge has been going on since the 60s. Not one person has passed it. Think about that. That says it all to me. I was one of those die-hard Glenn Beck followers back in 2008 to 2010 when I started college. A lot of it was because I was the disenfranchised, forgotten about white guy that was not reaping the benefits of my race and gender that everyone seemed to harp on about. I say white because in America there isn't near the gypsy hate that I experienced when I was in France. I drank the Kool-Aid. He had my interests at heart, and I ate it up. Anti-gay, anti-climate change, anti-Obama, anti-abortion, anything and everything he stood for, I stood for. Freshman year of college, my lottery roommate wore CCCP shirts unironically. We argued a lot. We chose to live together for another year with two other guys in a 4-man room, which by all understanding should have been the room from heck. An alt-right gypsy, a Polish communist, a Scottish black Democrat, and a wildcard libertarian Filipino. By all accounts it should have been heck on earth for all of us. But while we had our differences in political opinion, we were still able to have civil conversations and were still united through MTG and our brutal engineering workloads. Black bro and I would go into town a lot for food, frat parties, and to go to the card shop. It really opened my eyes to how vastly different people were treated based on race in America. In France, black folk weren't treated as poorly as I was, but in the US it's 10x worse. I remember us walking down the street to our favorite burrito place after getting sufficiently buzzed at a party. A cop stopped him to give him 20 questions and told me that I looked like I wasn't going to cause trouble and I could go on. WTF, we were together. How can one of the two of us look up to no good when we're literally walking side by side down the sidewalk? That was the first instance that cracked my narrow-sighted view of how crap played out in the US. Over the remainder of the year, we slowly started changing each other's opinions and pulled each other towards the center. The Polish communist is now "you ain't raising my taxes," taking my guns or my Mexican employees away redneck deep in the South. It's actually hilarious. Dude, write a script about that experience, now. I used to think that Apple devices were the best. Finally I got tired of it and tried Android. I'll never go back to Apple devices again. I like Android as a developer because I don't need to pay $99 a year for the privilege of putting my own apps on my own phone. I can develop from literally any computer, including Macs, and I don't need to buy into the entire Android ecosystem. I just need their ride, which is pretty nice anyway, unless I use one of the alternative build systems, like Xamarin, and a phone to test on. Landing on the moon. Mum was insistent while I was growing up that we didn't, so I took that stance, too. As soon as I was old enough to research it and form my own opinion, I changed my mind pretty quickly. I was raised thinking bisexuality was just a phase and that meant someone just hadn't decided yet. Boy, was I a dickhead for a while there. I used to think South Park was a stupid childish cartoon, until I actually watched it properly and saw how episodes highlight how stupid the world is, all through the children's innocence. It's my favorite show now. Came out of a coma after a suicide attempt. Checked into treatment for depression and addiction. Stayed almost 8 months. Did a lot of hard fricking work. Now, I'm in a sober living house. Just got promoted, and will have a year clean in less than 2 weeks. Great job. That couldn't have been an easy road to be on. Organic food is not more healthful than conventionally produced food. I used to think so, but then I researched. I evaluated the evidence. I learned about the consensus of experts, and I started to require quality sources for the claims of organic food proponents. And when I did, it didn't take long to realize that, despite the brilliantly effective marketing by the organic food industry, none of their health claims are supported by evidence. Organic food is a racket. It's not even that much better for the environment if at all. But most people believe it is, and they hold this belief for bad reasons. I used to believe for bad reasons, too. But then I applied the same skeptical principles to organic food that I do to everything else in my life. I'm glad I no longer believe a false thing. Was an addict, then I OD'd, dropped out of community college, went to be a kids counselor focusing on drugs. Now I'm just learning moderation to stop drinking so much while I open my own business. I was raised to believe homosexuality was very, very wrong. Like it should be illegal to even be gay. Even though I knew I wasn't hetero, I always thought I was going to heck for just my thoughts. Between 18 and 20, I realized what a piece of work my mom really was, and it made me reevaluate everything she ever told me. Now I am comfortable with myself, and 100% support all LGBT rights. When I was a kid I felt sorry for kids with gay parents because of the potential bullying, but as I grew older I was like, so what if they're gay? As long as they love you, they're no different from any other loving parents. I feel like you didn't feel bad for them for the wrong reason though. They probably do get bullied about it, and it's okay to feel bad about that, while still knowing that they have loving parents. That breast is best. Before I had my own children, I believed what is commonly stated that a mother's body will produce the milk that the baby needs. I thought moms who chose to formula feed gave up too early, or didn't try hard enough. Then I had my own children. My first gained far below the healthy weekly amount a child should gain, and had about 1 bowel movement a week. I did everything I was supposed to, pumped, fed her often, took supplements and even medication to promote milk production. Nothing increased my supply. The pressure for moms to breastfeed is nuts though, and it definitely led to postpartum depression for me. When I finally decided to combi feed her, everything was so much better. When my son was born, it was the same situation, but fortunately I didn't care what others thought and quickly opted for formula. Breast is not best when it results in a starving baby and an unhappy depressed mother who feels like a failure. We have formula for a reason. We had wet nurses for all of eternity for a reason. Fed is best. A happy mom is much more important to a baby than breast milk. Sorry for the rant. I was raised in a Southern Baptist home. I had been taught and believed my entire life that homosexuality was not only disgusting, but that homosexuals were basically devil-worshipping heathens who deserved to go to heck. Then, in 9th grade, 2 of my closest friends came out to me. My entire belief system was shaken to the core. These guys were amazing people who were so dear to my heart that I just couldn't reconcile what I had been taught my entire life with reality. I eventually wound up dropping my religion. Read. Practically a cult, rather than dropping my friends, and my life is all the better for it. Used to think any edgy emo kids who were depressed were just going for attention. Made friends with a emo girl. Later got a bout of depression. Realized most of them just have crappy home lives and actual depression that they struggle with every day. I grew up super religious and went to a private Christian school where I was literally taught that environmentalism, i.e., wanting to take care of the planet, was a lack of faith in God. All the pushes to recycle and stuff were saying that God hadn't given us enough. Believed it wholeheartedly. I'd like to say that it was reason and thinking on my own that changed my mind, but it was more just becoming less sheltered. Mom and I moved. I went to a public school and I remember at first all the recycling bins at the school literally horrifying me. Evidence of the godless nature of the public school system. But, well, after about a year of not having religious education and being surrounded by people of different opinions, I started to just see it differently. I began to see protecting the environment as more of an act of protecting the gift from God that was the planet. Incidentally, I'm not particularly religious anymore, but I wouldn't call that opinion a 180, mostly because I have no idea where I stand right now. That is so weird to me, that religious people can think that way. I would think that religious people would be more concerned about the planet and environment, since it's where God chose for us to live, and thus we should have a duty to care for it, much like you think now. Reagan Republican with strong opinions about welfare recipients until I became a victim of trickle-down economics and got laid off. Ended up being hired as a welfare case worker. Huge eye-opener. Dedicated Democrat today. Baseball is boring. Being gay is wrong. Abortion is murder. Most politicians serve common interests. Capital punishment is acceptable. OJ was innocent. Punishments for prisoners over rehabilitation. I used to think punishing prisoners was the best approach and was totally for solitary confinement until I discovered the effects being in solitary can have on a human after just 7 days. Multiple studies have shown, including an experiment at Maine State Prison, that rehabilitating prisoners over punishing them has positive effects and helps them when they are released from prison. Putting prisoners in solitary confinement for long periods of time leaves them with severe mental health issues and can cause them to be extremely violent or attempt suicide. Khalif Browder is the reason why I did a 180. He was falsely accused of a crime, beaten repeatedly by correctional officers, left in solitary on Rikers Island for approximately 800 days and never had his day in court. He attempted suicide multiple times in prison and a few more times when he was finally released. He died in 2015 for no goddamn reason other than he was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Helping prisoners rather than punishing them makes more sense to me now. If these people are to be released back into the general public, why on earth would we want to potentially make them worse versions of their current self? When I first joined Reddit about 5 years ago, I bought into that whole Tumblr sucks, all feminists suck, SJWs are everywhere and the devil mentality with an isekai vibe. Luckily it was a short run before I realized I was being ridiculous. Paying a teenage babysitter a few bucks an hour. My old logic was that it's not a real job, and I see it as throwing a bone to someone who isn't old enough to get a real job yet. After all, it's not taxed, and it's not like they're a pro, and we are a family on one income and I'd never afford a night out if I paid much more than a few bucks an hour. My friend completely changed my mind when she argued I was leaving. Theoretically, I had not left my kid in anyone's care at that point besides my in-laws, my most precious and valuable thing in my entire life in the hands of this person. They are worth minimum wage for that. On top of that, it may empower the sitter to always ask for what they are worth and not settle for less, and sets a good example for my own kid. Anytime I mention this, people tell me, well, I'd never leave the house if I did that. That's ridiculous. I'm not paying a teen that much, which makes me think I don't argue the point as well as my friend did, but it definitely changed my mind in an instant. Used to believe in the whole friend zone thing. While it's definitely true that a lot of girls seem weirdly attracted to dong heads, the idea that you deserve a girl just because you like her is stupid. You haven't been friend zoned. She just doesn't want you in that way. Do you find every single girl you ever see attractive? You don't. So why should you feel entitled to have any girl you want? I don't know if it's a full 180, but I used to be 100% in the camp of I'm all for civil unions. But I don't think gay couples should be able to get married. I was of the opinion that civil unions and marriages should be the same in the eyes of the law, but marriages are a church religious thing. Besides, it's just a word, right? Then I realized that it doesn't affect me in the slightest, so why does my opinion really matter? And 2, if it's just a word, then who cares? They should be able to get married if they want to. Live and let live. I went from Christian to atheist in a span of about a week. Also, when I was little, when I was introduced to the fact that the earth is round, I didn't believe the teacher. I had lost a round of musical chairs beforehand, and for about 3 days I thought the earth was flat before my mom took me to the beach and I saw a boat dip below the horizon with a telescope I hid. I used to associate with the crowd of YouTube that started out with the anti-extremist religion set of views, the amazing atheist, Mresian, etc. But after a few years they started to do a complete 180 and started railing against the evil strawman SJWs, often using the same arguments they railed against only a few years before. I almost fell into that mindset too until I got some female friends and, learned firsthand the issues I was parroting the opinions of from men who talk to other men about said issues. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.